how it's going. Super, this one will be very good. It's even flooding 20 centimeters into the depression here, so it could be connected with a wetland of up to 1,000 square meters later, a very wet meadow. Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry.
Jak się masz?
Warstwa czarnej ziemi jest bardzo cienka, prawie jej nie ma tutaj w tym miejscu, więc jest to dobre miejsce na wykopanie stawu. Tutaj jest też złoże piasku, które pojawiło się podczas kopania. W tym miejscu wykopiemy trochę głębiej, a to miejsce później rozsmarujemy glinę, żeby zabezpieczyć dno zbiornika przed uciekaniem wody.
Lesser spotted eagle is like a parasol species for protection of landscape in this area. It is hunting frogs and mammals in very wet meadows. And in Podlasia we have a lot of wet meadows and very natural in vegetation, and with plenty of frogs, also mammals. And they are hunting in these areas. So by protecting the eagle, and the nest around the eagle could be 50, 100 hectares of area where we can help other species like amphibians, mammals. In this meadow, it's about 10 hectares. It used to be overgrown with willows, and after 20 years out of use, now it's restored as open landscape, and the meadow is rather flat and not so many possibilities for amphibians to breed. There is one wetland, which is over here, where there's a little population of 20 Żabie moczorowa, and by adding another 13 ponds similar to these, it will be 13 more places on the whole meadow where the Żabie moczorowa will be putting their eggs, and they will every year from each pond could have few thousand young ones, which are about 1 gram, and they could grow to 20 to 40 grams and be very good food for the eagles. So these ponds for amphibians, they must be very shallow and very flat banks. And in order to have a warm water, that the breeding of the frogs can start early in the spring, and new young frogs appear in June as quick as possible, and they grow as quick as possible. So warm water and shallow water are important. In order to do this, we have to make these banks flat like this and maximum half a meter depth. And this pond has now 10 centimeters of water in November, one day after digging. But in spring we will have water like this, and it will hit the green meadow, and the frogs will put the eggs here, and you imagine that the water goes slow and disappears in July, and the frogs go out of the pond to the meadow, the young frogs, and the pond could be dry in August. It's okay, and the farmer can cut the meadow here in the pond, or the bisons or the cattle or the horses can graze this pond to keep it open in future. In order to preserve this pond as long as possible for breeding frogs, it's important that the meadow is used by PTOP or by farmers, and it's the cutting, which is possible even to drive into the pond and cut, if possible, when it's dry, or that the cattle will walk here. So the shallow banks with the very hard bottom, so the cattle will not sink too much. We have clay in the bottom, so the bisons and the cattle can walk through and eat all the grasses and the reed which will grow here. So the ponds will be somehow self-maintained as a part of the meadow ecosystem. It's just a lower part of a flat meadow. Here in Białowieża forest, FPP Consulting started to make ponds for rare amphibians, for Kumak, Żabie. It's 10 years old. The pond is half a meter deep. It has a good bottom of clay. It's hard, we don't sink, and no fish because sometimes it dries out. The water is clear, and this is important for the amphibians. The clear water has, with the green plants in the bottom, has a very good oxygen, and this oxygen is important. This high level of oxygen for the eggs to hatch and to get a good start of the most critical point of their life for the amphibians is when they are the eggs and the small tadpoles.
Pływaki są dobrymi wskaźnikami na temat jakości wody. Występują w wodach czystych.
So what we see here is the small pond which were dug 14 years ago by one of our projects, 1998. It's close to the edge of the forest. The wild animals are coming here. The farmers are disappearing. Not very many people have cows and horses anymore. And the cows and horses are important to keep the ponds open. Instead, we can use in our work the way to put the ponds on the meadows very close to the forest, 100-200 meters or so. And we can have a use of all the big animals helping us to keep the ponds open as a good breeding site for the amphibians. Here you see that the wild pig has been swimming here and rolling and kept completely made it open clay. On the other side of the pond there's tracks of Żabie and yellen, and more animals are coming there and keeping a bigger area open. Project for lesser spotted eagle, we have planned altogether to make 50 such ponds in Białowieża, Termiński, Maszewo, the Natura 2000 side of Białowieża forest, and also another 50 in the OCZKA forest in the river valleys. But we are locating the ponds as close to the nest as possible, and on those meadows where we know that the eagles are feeding or where we hope to get the eagles back feeding. Meadows which are restored by RDLP and PTOP. The interesting with this project is that the first time we make the ponds in a close cooperation with state organizations like RDLP, PTOP, so that the management of the ponds are more secured for the future. This pond we made with the private owner. It's still a very good pond, but it's difficult to motivate the people in the village to keep cutting the meadow if they don't have cows anymore and they are getting older. So the new project integrates everything with the lesser spotted eagle.
Projekt Ochrona Orlika Krzykliwego na wybranych obszarach Natura 2000 jest współfinansowany przez Unię Europejską w ramach instrumentu finansowego Life Plus oraz przez Narodowy Fundusz Ochrony Środowiska i Gospodarki Wodnej w Warszawie.